clockwise, clockwise. Never turn back. Only go clockwise. Never go back. Only go clockwise, clockwise, clockwise.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back to another episode of 3 Questions with Corey Kareem, the podcast where we sit down with some amazing people who are doing some amazing things. And that's right, you guessed it. Sometimes we ask them 4 questions, 5, 6, 7, 8. I know. I read the comments. I hear y'all. But rather than just talk about my guests, their wins or their successes, we tend to start the conversation around their failures, more specifically, the lessons that they learn from those individual experiences. So, with that being said, my guest today is a dynamic force in the world of artist development and performance coaching. As featured in Rolling Stone magazine, she is known as the Artist Whisperer. She is also the founder of the Rose Effect, LLC, a consultancy that helps individuals unlock their full potential and achieve extraordinary levels of presence and connectivity. With a track record of success working with industry giants such as Clive Davis and coaching top talent like Lil Nas X and the Lumineers, she has a wealth of real-world knowledge and expertise. Her impressive portfolio also includes directing talent in major national campaigns and appearances on top media outlets like WGN America and NBC, to name a few. She believes, I quote, that we are all artists. So, without further ado, Keanna KJ Rose Henson, welcome to the podcast, sister.
For my mother's satisfaction, you're going to have to introduce me again as, with all further ado, Keanna.
Keanna. Okay.
Yes.
So, without further ado, Keanna. Keanna KJ Rose Henson. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah.
Shout out to Mom Dukes. I got you.
Yeah. She literally called me the other day and said, you know, I hate that when I have them call your name, Siri says Keanna. And she says, I wish I had to put an accent so people would know and not say Keena or Keanna as opposed to Keanna. So I just, yeah.
Got you. Noted. Noted. So I know I gave you a little bit of a lightweight introduction, and I probably could have went another minute or two on the intro. So for my listeners and for my audience that are just getting to know who you are and what you do, why don't you give them a little self-elevator pitch?
Sure. I am a girl from the south side of Chicago that moved to the burbs, which gave me the best of all the worlds. I was born with this level of impenetrable energy that most could not understand and probably was not digestible. And it would cause me to almost find this kind of area or time where I would shrink until I became very aware that that was part of my lot, that it was part of my assignment, and that I had been making deposits every day towards what God truly wanted me to do, which was to help people to fully actualize in whatever area of business and whatever stage they occupied, because I say we are all artists, and it doesn't matter where you occupy your space, wherever you spend the most time, that is your stage. And so my job is to help you to re-champion your story on that stage, to tell compelling stories on that stage, to help you embrace your force, identify dormant potential, and to fully seize the power and the source that you have access to every moment of the day.
That was poetic, y'all. Dormant potential. I love that. There's a lot of, what do they say about the graveyard? That's the wealthiest place in the world because it's a place of unrealized potential, and you can help resurrect that.
Yes.
So let's jump into my first question. I'd like to come out the gate a little bit. So as I mentioned, KJ. We like to start this podcast off with talking about failure, mistakes, difficult moments. So, with that in mind, tell me about a time or a moment where you had to face your biggest challenge, mistake, setback, what have you. What happened? How'd you overcome it? And most importantly, what did you learn from that experience?
Um, yeah, that word failure is a tricky one. So I like all the other ones you use, setback,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, challenges, because oftentimes I always find the win on the other side, even though when you're going through it, it is tough to reconcile, right? So I will say I had, and I'm not gonna say any names, but I will say I've never shared this story. So you're the first.
Ooh, exclusive. Okay, let's go.
Exclusive. And it took me some time, I think, to find the resolve in this. And so I remember I had an opportunity to perform with one of my one of the like biggest icons. I'm sure people are going to deduce from this information. And so I was just overstimulated, from the dancing to the singing and and so, you know, I think we were maybe on like a break. And so I was kind of watching, some of the dancers and, it was the songs that I just, were part of my soul. And
Mm,
so, I would just kind of be marking it with them like, yes, yes. And I guess someone observed that um, and they decided that they didn't want that type of energy. And
mm.
so they let me go.
Wow.
Right. And so I was just like, you can't help but to become an extreme kind of stoic existence in, whatever um job comes next, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, okay, it's fine. It was figuring out the healthy balance between understanding that there are so many dimensions and layers of me, and not everybody needs all of it all the time.
Mm.
And it doesn't mean I'm being less of me. It means that I'm being wise in how much this particular space can receive, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's like, how do I fully honor myself, but have a level of um, kind of awareness that, and more like an acute awareness that everybody may not be able to receive it. And so even though it like hurt me to my core, like at
Mm-hmm.
that moment, it was like such this failure. On the other side of that was definitely more opportunities with different people. But I think the greatest lesson was understanding that there's an entire spectrum of of my existence, and I can still create almost like this arsenal or this reservoir of energy, and really just give you as much as you need or you can handle, and say, and never pour from that arsenal, but always pour from the excess. And that way I never feel like I'm being less of me
That's a skill.
every
Um, be,
day.
yeah, because I've struggled with that, like learning how to be your authentic self, but knowing that perhaps your authentic self might be too much, as you said, to in some areas or with some folks, and to kind of get it regulated where you're still being you, but it's
Mhm.
in the dose that is conducive for the environment that you're in.
Yeah, I guess it's a they said this in church. They were talking about, what type of Christian are you? Are you one that likes to just keep dipping, dipping the tea
Mm,
in, or are you one that steeps the tea, right? And that
mm,
is your relationship with God. It says a lot, and I think that I've learned to dip in and out,
mm,
and kind of create this trust that whatever your stuff is, whatever your historical injuries may be from a professional or personal level, learning how to take stock, which is, you're right, it is an interesting dance and a choice that one has to make before entering into a new environment every time, like no artist, no experience is the same. And so where one artist could not, and I'm not even going to say it was the artist, because I don't know where it came from. Let's just say it came from the people around that was super protective.
Right.
However, if not careful, you will begin to almost start editing yourself in a way in which would have been appreciated by the next opportunity, right? And then they may not think that you are as invested because you don't show up with energy. So yeah, it's I think when you're in the business of reporting to yourself as an entrepreneur, you are kind of creating your own bylaws, within this. Is not like this corporate kind of book that says, okay, this is what you do in this instance. This is when you promote yourself. This is when you back up. If you're not in tune, and for me, it is only being in tune with God and constantly praying so that I understand that whatever door he opens, it was less about me forcing my way into it and more about him saying, you're needed here. Like, I don't think I land anywhere I'm not needed.
Right. I love that perspective. So kind of pivoting over to kind of your bread and butter, like this performance development coach that you are, this mega star in this development aspect space. You've worked with a number of well-known artists. Little Nas X is one I mentioned in the intro, and many others. What are some, like, I'm curious to know, and I'm sure many of my listeners are also curious to know, what are some things that average listeners, consumers of music, just the artistry of music and performance in itself, would be surprised to know about some of their favorite artists? And that, to give you further context around that question, I once had someone tell me that Frank Sinatra, well into his career, before he used to go up on stage, he used to like throw up every time before he went on stage. Like, he still got nervous. So I'm interested to know if there's anything that we would be surprised to know about some of the artists that we love and adore so much.
Well, this work is really personal.
From a performance perspective, we don't get into
It's
I know you got to keep things hush hush for sure.
I'm like, all of my artists, think besides one, are still very much alive. And so, I want to work again.
Yeah, of course.
So it is but I will just say, Heavy D, rest his soul. I was a singer with Heavy, so I did not do any artist development or movement with Heavy D. But what I did, it was a really great kind of lesson in working with him, which was, I had sang in the studio, and most times people are during this time, they weren't necessarily looking for me per se, but I was always available. I'm always like, my superpower is that I can show up, right? And then I will exhaust you into the opportunity, or just the presence and the energy alone will just make you think differently about whatever was supposed to happen. I'm gonna get this thing going. So showed up to the studio. They never thought that this song was going to be a single, right? And so in working with him, I just, I think we're only privy to like the videos and, but never the work ethic that some of these artists embody. And Heavy was one that was like very keen on making sure there was a specific sound, and he was an avid writer, and so in that opportunity, and he was super professional. I'm going to studios. I mean, I think I get this call at like 11 at night, so I'm traveling from Brooklyn to like 50 something, you know, in Midtown. And so uptown, yeah, more Midtown. And so it was just from there, knowing that there was this, we were building this camaraderie in like real time, right? And so then being asked to come, not by him, but by the team, being asked to come to LA to sing in the video, only to get to the set and be told that there was nothing in the video that I could do.
Oh,
And
wow.
I was like, but I don't understand. Like I'm singing on it. Who else gonna do it? You know, I'm the one singing. And you know, just realizing that I was kind of caught in between some politics happening within, and only to go back to look, I'm gonna set the stage. It was a rainy day. I walked away crying, and I was just like, this was supposed to be my big break. And
Yeah.
so then I get a call from his people a few weeks later saying, can you do the remix for the song? And so, you know, this is when I had to get this. I grew up really quickly, you know, in the industry. Number one, understanding that you can't take things personally, right?
Big
So
facts.
it was like, my first thought was like, absolutely not. Hell no, we ain't doing it. I'm good. You hurt my feelings already. I showed up, but all the way in LA. It wasn't like I went to Harlem. Like I went to LA from New York. And so, but I just kind of checked myself. I was like, okay, so if you say no, you'll be justified in your feelings, but then they'll call somebody else. And so how does that work, right? So then you'll miss a second opportunity to hear yourself singing on Hot 97, BLS, all the New York stations while you are riding down the West Side Highway, like you heard the first time, which is so Aurora, Indy. And so I'm like, so this would be more of an epic fail for you than it would be for them, because they were looking for you in the first place. You know what I'm saying? You clawed your way to this opportunity. And so I said yes. And as soon as I came into the studio, so I basically said to myself, you are not going to be friends. You're going to do your job and you're going to keep it on moving. And coming into the space, Heavy had such, you know, I'm sure he was made aware and informed of what was happening, but just the heart for him to give me time to kind of like, to make me comfortable in the space. Like he never mentioned what was happening, you know, but his behavior actually that was his way to me of like, I'm sorry this happened, you know, and just how I was able to gain so much more from that yes than I could have ever gained from that no.
Right. Right. And so I take a couple of different beats from that story. And thank you for sharing that, of course. Like being able to pivot,
Yeah.
not taking things too personally,
Yeah.
and just trying to like, and that not taking things too personally, like looking at things objectively. Like you said, I needed them more than they needed me.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, when we look at like artists today, you know, I think Erica Badu maybe coined this phrase, I'm an artist, so I'm sensitive about my shit.
Yeah.
Do you think when you look at some of the artists today that are coming out today, do you think there are some, from your vantage point, are there like some common, I don't want to call them mistakes, traps that you see artists making when they may be playing their hand too soon, if I could use that as a way to describe? Is there any kind of common things you see artists making that are like, whoa, that's too soon for this person to do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a interesting dynamic in that if you change one thing, then you possibly lose something else, right? So it's oftentimes their makeup that makes them the genius and gives the creativity that they project. And so it's a fine line. However, just to share a story, I remember going to see an artist. I was at a festival, like in the Caribbean. And so the festival skewed, you know, more over 35, we'll just say that. And so much of my community and the people that I was kicking it with were not really informed of this particular artist. And so for me, when people don't know who you are, the playing field is set for your win, right? For your victory. If they not expecting nothing, all you got to do is be the best of you until they can start singing along again. And this artist was so pissed. And I get it. You want to do your best in real time. You want to give the performance, and anything less than that makes you feel like you are just not succeeding in that moment. And so instead of him having the wherewithal to say, you know what, this sound is whack, turn everything off, but I want to sing for y'all. Like, the moment was so like pregnant with a victory. If he had not allowed the emotion of the performance to make him walk off stage. So it went from, we don't know who you are, to you got this latitude to actually win us over, to you saying, I'm out of here, to us saying, oh, that dude that walked off. So now we know you in a negative light, right? So he just never gave himself a chance to win. And my kind of like internal metric has always said, I hate the idea of losing twice, right?
Ooh,
even if in real time you're losing sound, you're losing the opportunity to have it the way you envisioned it. Yes, that is freaking frustrating. It is frustrating to not, you practice all this time and then not to have the sound the way you want. However, the second opportunity to win or to not lose is in you saying, let me just sing. Before I go, y'all, it seems like this ain't working out. Before I go, let me sing you something a cappella, right? Because what seems like a win can set you up, seems like a loss can set you up for a win you never expected. And so anyway, yeah, it's leading with emotion, not letting emotion serve you the best way that it can, but allowing it to pretty much fracture, an impending relationship and rapport.
Absolutely. I love that. And what I take from that is also the ability to lack vision. And I think sometimes, as just a fan of music,
yeah,
when artists say, hey, I'm a music artist, I sometimes feel like they forget the last part of that title, artist.
yeah,
Some people might come into the music game and say, hey, I'm a rapper. So let's think of Pitbull. He was rapping that way. And then, it was going okay for him. And then he makes a pivot to more pop, EDM sound, takes off,
yeah.
right? Because he realized I'm an artist. I can make different genres of music. And I think that takes someone who's self-aware, someone who has vision and understands that there really are an artist. You can go in many different directions.
Yeah.
And I love that story, by the way. So much perspective there. So let's pivot. We'll talk about pivoting. So let's pivot this conversation and talk about Confidence Con, your conference, your
Yeah.
baby. So why did you decide to create a conference about confidence? That's a mouthful right there. A conference about confidence, and
Yeah.
what can attendees expect to learn from Confidence Con?
Yes. So I actually akin my desire for confidence con. I akin my desire to build Confidence Con to my tenure as a background singer, right? So in the space of touring, it was like I was always 20 feet from stardom. It was comfortable. I was learning practically at other people's expense. And but I knew that the longer I stayed in that position, the less likely I would be to take a chance on myself, to take that leap, right? Because sometimes you could stay in places longer than God intended, and then it becomes diminishing return. And so, as someone that would be hired to come and speak at conferences, to deliver a workshop, in that same way, I was still in the back of my mind as a background singer was saying, but you got this desire to also be in the forefront and to put out your own stuff. And so the more you continue, and that gave me life to really be able to support other people. But the more you continue in this, then the less energy you will begin to have for your own thing. And so that's the same as a speaker and someone that wanted to build just kind of a destination for creatives, artists, executives, of all disciplines to tap into their personal star power. And so I was coming up, with all these names that just sounded so like sophisticated. And I was like, you are in the business where people don't want to have to think that hard. Like, go straight to it. Don't be this heavy lift where people got to ask you 5 and 6 questions. Like, let it be what it's going to be. And I remember talking to one of my partners, Anton, and he went to FAMU, and he was just like, why not just say confidence, Con? Like, it was, and because I was throwing out words. I was like, empowerment, confidence, da, 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 da. And then, that's what we, landed on. And it was just like, there is no further description that needs to be made about the word confidence. It does not mean that you don't possess it. It may only require you to just come and get a jolt, an extra push, because maybe the confidence that you have today only worked for the opportunity you had yesterday, but not for where you're going, right? So let's prepare you with the confidence that's required for where you're going. Let's give you and remind you of your dopeness because you just encountered something that almost, kind of depleted your confidence or fractured your confidence. And so it was kind of like this necessary thing that, as much as I was like, my superpower is that I show up and I can do your thing, but I don't know if I can produce from the visualization to the operationalizing of this idea. And it was just like, it came to me that, well, number one, I had been looking for all these other proper like conference venues. And God was like, I just don't know why you won't go to the place where you've transformed the most people, right? So oftentimes, because we are often scaled, we're kind of exposed to these scaled events, that we can have a vision or an idea that's not juxtaposed to that, and then we'll discount our own idea, right? And so God was like, you've transformed the most people at the studio that you work from almost every day. And so it became like very clear that I needed to be at Evolution. And so in that room, as I'm speaking to the 55 attendees, I said, you are sitting in the room where I coach Tyla. We are headed to the room that I coach Lil Nas. And you just came from the room that I coach Polo G, right? So the walls are inherently already awaiting, your victory. They already got victories within it. You know what I mean? It's set up for you to win. And so it became like my own kind of baby, and kind of like me saying, it was not only like this, it's so personal, right? Because it was like, I said to myself, do not let 2024 go by without pouring back into you. And this was my way of doing that, of taking any doubt that I had about being able to produce a thing, and saying, it's bigger than you. It's really not about you. You're the vessel. And you'll start moving quicker on things that, God whispers to you about, when you realize that you are supposed to be a blessing to somebody else. And I think what took me so long is trying to figure out how I would get these skill sets, myself. And God said, I didn't ask you to put the choir together. I asked you to put the team together. I just asked you to sing your note. And by singing your note, other people will harmonize with you and jump in. And that's what happened.
Love it.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that so much, because sometimes, what's funny is, when I think of that last part you just said, I think about a lot of times we know what we're supposed to do, but we overthink all the other things, all the other additives, and when we just need to kind of just show up in that space. So I love that you kind of addressed that. And I think confidence is something that, to me, in my purview, is is something we rent. Because you said something to me that I never really thought about it that way. That we might be confident, we might have been confident from our old role, our old position, but now we're in this new situation. We might not, that confidence might not carry over. So
Right.
confidence is something that we always need to curate and build, because we might require different types or levels of confidence depending on what that opportunity is. And I never really looked at it that way until you just described that.
Yeah.
So I received that, KJ. Look at that. I'm getting coached already. I'm not even a paying client. Look at that. So I know we only got a few minutes left here. So, I think I mentioned this at the top of the podcast. When I started this, it was really meant to help people realize that, whether you want to call it failure, mistakes, lessons, that's one, it's something that everyone goes through. Two, even the people that were very successful had various different levels of, failures, mistakes, mishaps, however you want to phrase that. So my kind of final big question for you here, KJ, is if you could give one piece of advice to someone that is currently, down and out, in a rut, in that in-between phase, waiting for their big break, what would that one piece of advice be?
That one piece of advice for someone that is in between wins is to pray for, access grace in the wait. Because personally, I have found that the wins that have been the deepest, most impactful, not just for me and others, have been the wins that I have collected during the wait, right? It's not just the ones that are highly visible, the ones that are high profiled, the ones that we can share with the world. Those are good, but it's what are you doing when there is no motion? And still continuously, your job is to continue to put points on the board, like give up in the wait, in terms of still realizing that the ideas you have, the ideas, so still realizing the ideas you had in the very kind of visible wins have the same value as the ideas you have. I'm gonna say it again. The ideas that you have in the visible win are still valued in the quieter ones. They still have value. And just because nobody is vetting or validating them does not mean that they lose their value. So continue to work in the wait, continue to add kind of more skills, to excavate new assets, to plant more seeds in that wait, because it is pruning you for something.
Ooh, amen. Amen. All right. KJ, really quick. So towards the end of my podcast is where I actually asked the 3 questions, and they're 3 quick questions. And you're going to give me the best answer, first thought that comes to your mind. So here it goes. These are fun and light.
I got to go fast, or it's just more like just 3 and do my best?
Do your best.
Okay.
So first one here. What is one thing a Delta has over an AKA?
Oh my God. What are we doing? How did we get here?
I did my homework, so I just want to know. You can be respectful.
You know what? I'm going to say this. There's so many things that can be said, but in the spirit of a recent loss, I'm going to say a Delta has Nikki Giovanni.
Ooh, amen. Say no more. Say less, as they say. Here's another one. Here, what is a quote or a mantra that you currently live by?
Okay, I got 2.
Go for it.
I just said it the other day. Well, number 1, I would say, you are the yes you've been waiting for. Don't ever forget what you came here for. And no matter what, it is your job to make it count and take up space with your gift. That's what it's about. Okay, that's my KJ Rose Power Chant. You can find them on Pandora. You can find them on Amazon.
Love it.
And then the second one would be the regret for things that we have not, no, the regret for things that we've done can be tempered with time. It is the regret for the things that we have not done that is controllable.
I felt that one. Okay. I received that.
Amen.
So the third one actually, so fun fact for you, I'm actually working on one of those kind of conversation card games, but it's not for dating. This is for yourself. Because what I discovered, KJ, is that, and you could probably relate to this, that I came across a thought that said, no one will talk you into and out of more things than yourself. So being able to have that powerful self positive dialogue with yourself is one of the biggest things that could really change your life in a positive way. So I came up with this conversation card game that you kind of play with yourself or with a respectful loved one, if you will. It's called 3 Questions after the podcast. So what I'm going to do here, KJ, real quick, is my last final question is pull a question from the deck right now. And it says, name one thing you used to be afraid of, but are now comfortable with or do well. That's my final question to you.
Woo! I used to be afraid of fully actualizing in everything that God put me here to do. But now I am immensely comfortable in it. I abide in it, and I am it.
I love that. And you know what? That's a mic drop right there. So KJ, for all my listeners, my audience, the people who tune in, they want to maybe hire you as a coach. They want to follow you. They want to collaborate with you, whatever that is. What's the best way for them to reach out to you?
Absolutely. My email is contact@kjrose.com. My IG is KJ Rose, Effect, EFFECT. My TikTok is Rose Effect 20. My Facebook is Keanna KJ Rose Henson. And other than that, you can go through Corey.
Awesome. I love it, Keanna. I appreciate you so much. And guys, like from all my listeners that tune into every episode, I always end each episode with saying this. Sometimes you don't need to learn anything new. You just need to hear that somebody else went through it too. So with that being said, myself and KJ are out. Peace and love. Until the next time.
Till the next time.